I still remember the sound of her voice echoing in the kitchen that night. Sharp, final. Pack your things and go. And my mother didn't even look at me when she said it. She just slammed a cabinet door shut, like the noise itself was punctuation, like that bang was meant to hammer the last nail into whatever bond we had left. And you know what? I did exactly what she told me to, but not before I took back the one weapon I had left, my money. The Autopay accounts. Every single one of them. That had been quietly bleeding me dry for months. Mortgage, gas, electricity, internet, even the phone bills. They all went dark with a few clicks. I remember my finger hovering over the mouse, my pulse racing in my ears like a war drum, and then, one by one, cancel, cancel, cancel. A kind of calm washed over me. Cold, deliberate calm. By the time I zipped up my suitcase, the house was strangely quiet. No one followed me to the door. No one tried to stop me. My mother's words still hung in the air, thick and heavy, like smoke after a fire. But underneath the sting, underneath the humiliation, there was a small ember glowing in my chest. Relief. See, what they never realized was how much of myself I had already packed away long before that night. For months, I had been living like a ghost in my own family home, cooking meals that no one thanked me for, paying bills that no one acknowledged, carrying burdens that no one else even bothered to pretend to share. And still, I was the problem. Still, I was the one who wasn't pulling her weight. I spin it's funny. People think the breaking point comes in some dramatic explosion. But mine, it was quiet. It was the soft click of a cancel autopay button. It was the whisper in my head that said, "You don't owe them your life anymore." As I dragged my suitcase across the hardwood floor, the wheels thumping over the uneven planks, I felt like I was moving through two worlds at once. One was the world I had been chained to, resentment, guilt, manipulation, the suffocating weight of never being enough. The other was the unknown, dark, terrifying, yes, but at least it was mine. I can still hear the hollow echo of the front door closing behind me. The night air hit my face, damp and cold, and I stood on the porch for a long moment, just breathing. My hands were shaking, my throat was tight, but inside, somewhere deep, there was this fierce, quiet joy. Because in that moment, I wasn't just leaving a house, I was leaving a prison built out of family obligations and unspoken debts. I was leaving the version of myself who believed love had to be earned with sacrifice. I was walking into the unknown with nothing but a suitcase and the courage to finally say, enough. And that's where my story really begins. When people look at New York from the outside, they see the glitter. They see the skyline at night, the lights flickering like a million promises. They see Broadway, Wall Street, Times Square, but what they don't see are the shadows, those cracks where people like me fall when the ground suddenly disappears beneath us. I was 35 when it happened. I'd been working in media, communications, branding, all that buzzword stuff for over a decade. My job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent, kept me afloat, and gave me a sense of identity. Then came the layoffs. Not just one or two people, but an entire department gutted in a single day. I remember sitting in that sterile conference room, fluorescent lights buzzing above me, while some HR manager with a rehearsed smile told me my position was being eliminated. Eliminated. Like I was some extra line item in a budget spreadsheet. Walking out of that building, cardboard box in my arms, the cold February wind cut straight through me. New York streets don't slow down for your heartbreak. Yellow cabs still honk. People still rush past, faces buried in their phones. And there I was, just another shadow, carrying a box of broken plans. I tried to hold on. For a while, I dipped into my savings, telling myself I'd land something else soon. I polished my resume, sent out applications, showed up for interviews that felt more like interrogations. But the job market was brutal. Every rejection chipped away at me. My apartment in Manhattan started to feel like a cage, each rent payment draining me further into panic. One evening I stood by the window staring at the skyline, the Empire State Building glowing in the distance. I used to think it meant hope. That night, it just mocked me. I knew I couldn't keep it up. The math didn't lie. I had maybe 2 months left before I'd be completely broke. And so, with my pride swallowed and my spirit cracked, I called my mother. "Just until I get back on my feet," I told her. She didn't hesitate. "Of course, Jennifer. Come home." I wanted to believe that meant comfort. I wanted to believe it meant safety. I packed what I could, left my apartment keys on the counter, and rode the train to Brooklyn with a duffel bag and a gnawing sense of failure sitting heavy in my stomach. When I walked through the front door of my mother's brownstone, it smelled like old wood and faint lavender from her cleaning sprays. For a moment, I was 8 years old again, running in from the rain, but the nostalgia cracked quickly. My stepfather Harold glanced up from the recliner, grunted a half-hearted hello, then turned back to the TV. My younger sister, Melissa, the golden one, barely looked up from her phone. "Your room's upstairs," my mother said, her voice clipped but warm enough to keep me from breaking down on the spot. That night, lying on the old twin bed with its creaky frame, I stared at the ceiling. The wallpaper peeled at the edges, the radiator hissed like a restless ghost, and the city's noise filtered in through the thin window pane. I told myself it was temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month, just until I landed something new. But deep down, even then, I think I knew. Going back wasn't just about geography. It was about stepping into old shadows, old roles, old expectations, old wounds I thought I'd outgrown. I wasn't 35 that night. I was 15 again, invisible in my own home, bracing myself for a kind of cold that had nothing to do with winter. And that's how my second chapter began. Not with a job offer, not with a victory, but with a retreat into the shadows of Brooklyn, where the walls of my childhood home would soon remind me some debts can't be repaid with money, and some families mistake sacrifice for obligation. In every family, there's a crown. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it's shining so bright it blinds you. In my house, that crown belonged to my younger sister, Melissa. She wore it effortlessly, like it had been welded to her head the moment she was born. She didn't have to earn it. She didn't have to prove herself. She just existed, and somehow that was always enough. I can't remember a single holiday, birthday, or even an ordinary dinner where she wasn't the center of attention. If she breathed, my mother applauded. If she rolled her eyes, Harold laughed like it was comedy gold. And me? I could have set the table for 12, paid the utility bill that week, and scrubbed the kitchen floor until it shone, and all I'd hear was, "Jennifer, can't you try harder? Why can't you be more like your sister?" Melissa was 24. She still lived at home, but unlike me, her presence was never questioned. She had a part-time job at a boutique downtown, and you'd think she was running Wall Street with the way my mother bragged about it. Melissa is so stylish. She has such an eye for business. She's going to be successful one day. I'd sit at the table, fork in hand, listening to this endless chorus, while the balance in my bank account was being siphoned off into paying the mortgage none of them could afford. There was one afternoon that stays carved into me. I'd just come back from the grocery store, arms aching from carrying 2 heavy bags up the stairs. Inside those bags were the basics that kept the house running. Bread, milk, eggs, laundry detergent, toothpaste. I set them down on the counter, expecting at least a nod of acknowledgement. Instead, Melissa waltzed in, holding up a pair of new shoes she'd bought. Shiny, glittering, ridiculously expensive. "Oh my God, Mom, look at these!" she squealed. My mother rushed over, eyes lighting up like Christmas morning. "They're perfect, honey. You deserve them." And then, without missing a beat, she turned to me. "Jennifer, did you remember to pay the gas bill this week? They sent another notice." I wanted to laugh, or scream, or maybe both. There I was, paying for the roof over their heads, for the hot water they showered with, for the internet Melissa spent hours scrolling on, and still I was reduced to the girl who didn't do enough. The resentment grew slowly, like mold creeping along the corners of a wall. Every time I saw Melissa get praised for the smallest thing, a latte she made, a selfie she posted, a story about some guy at her job who flirted with her, it felt like another cut. Not because I wanted her life, but because mine was invisible. At night, lying awake in that childhood bedroom, I would hear laughter downstairs. Sometimes it was Melissa and Mom sharing a glass of wine. Sometimes it was Harold telling her she had real potential. I never heard those words aimed at me. My potential was never the topic of conversation. My struggles were never cushioned with hope. And yet, I was the one keeping the lights on. Literally. It's strange how favoritism doesn't just shape the favored. It shapes the forgotten. Melissa grew up with confidence dripping off her like perfume. I grew up cautious, second-guessing, careful not to ask for too much space or attention. By the time I moved back in, that old pattern slid over me like a well-worn coat. She was the golden sister, I was the shadow. But the thing about shadows is, they see everything. They notice the cracks in the golden surface. They hear the conversations behind closed doors. And slowly, silently, I started to realize that her crown wasn't made of gold at all. It was made of everyone else's sacrifices, mine most of all. That realization simmered in me, fueling a fire I didn't yet know I'd need. It's strange how the things that cost you the most energy, the most sacrifice, can still leave you feeling like you've done absolutely nothing. That was my life in that house. An endless list of contributions no one seemed to notice, let alone appreciate. Every morning I'd wake before anyone else. The house would be quiet, dim light sliding through the blinds, and I'd sit at the kitchen table with my laptop open. Not because I had work, I didn't, but because bills don't wait for jobs. I'd log into accounts, check balances, schedule payments, mortgage due, electricity overdue, internet climbing again, my stepfather Harold's credit card, minimum payment required. And without hesitation, without anyone asking, I covered it, over and over. Rent money that could have gone to a new apartment for me. Gone. Savings that should have been my safety net. Dwindling. I was funneling everything I had into keeping their world upright, while mine quietly collapsed. One evening, I remember writing a check for the electricity, my name scrawled across the line, my hand cramping slightly. Melissa breezed past me, curling her hair in the hallway mirror. "Don't forget the Wi-Fi, Jen. I've got an online sale going live tomorrow." She didn't even look at me, didn't see the stack of bills spread across the table, or the way I rubbed my temples, exhaustion pressing into my skull. Harold was worse in some ways. His credit card statements came stuffed with charges I couldn't understand. Restaurants, gadgets, things I'd never even heard him talk about. And yet, when the calls from the bank started, guess who answered them? Me. Guess whose account they quietly drained into every Autopay cycle? Mine. I can still hear the robotic voice over the phone confirming, "Payment successful." And then silence. No thank you, no recognition. Just the hum of the refrigerator in the background and Harold's TV blasting in the other room. The invisibility was suffocating. I was paying for a roof over all of our heads, for hot showers, for the phone lines they bickered on, and still, at dinner, my mother would look at me and say, "Jennifer, maybe you should contribute more. You're an adult." Contribute more. As if keeping the lights from flickering out, as if saving Harold's credit from total collapse, as if making sure Melissa's Wi-Fi didn't cut out mid-Instagram story wasn't enough. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being essential but unseen. Like the foundation of a house, everything rests on you, but no one ever looks down. They only notice when you crack. Some nights I'd lie awake in my childhood bed, the radiator clanging like a heartbeat in the dark, and I'd calculate. Not just numbers, but worth. How much of myself had I traded away to keep them comfortable? How many opportunities slipped past me because I was too busy patching up their mess? And for what? Not love, not gratitude, just the privilege of being labeled the burden in the very house I was holding together. What I wish they could have seen was the quiet violence it did to my spirit. Every bill I paid without acknowledgement felt like erasing myself a little more. Every sigh of relief they had when something didn't get shut off was another piece of me disappearing, until I felt almost translucent. But invisibility has a sharp edge. It cuts both ways. Because once you realize no one truly sees you, you stop needing your permission to walk away. At the time, though, I didn't know that lesson yet. I was still deep in it, still drowning in invisible contributions, still waiting for someone, anyone, to notice. And that waiting nearly broke me. It's strange, isn't it? How betrayal doesn't always come with shouting, or slammed doors, or a knife you can see. Sometimes it comes quiet, soft, like a shadow moving behind you when you're not looking. That's how it felt the day I found out I had finally gotten what I thought was a lifeline. A company in Manhattan had reached out. A marketing firm, not huge but respectable. The kind of place where you can rebuild a career, brick by brick. The email was short, polite, professional. "We'd like to invite you for an interview next Thursday." I remember staring at those words on the screen like they were sunlight breaking through clouds. My chest actually lifted. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely sinking. I didn't tell anyone right away. I wanted to savor it, to hold on to the hope without it being tainted by the usual sarcasm or dismissal. But secrets are fragile in that house. Melissa had this way of drifting through my room like it was hers too, borrowing clothes, spritzing perfume on her way out, pretending she was just checking in. She had access to everything, because my laptop sat on my desk, my phone sometimes left charging unattended. I didn't even think twice about it. She was my sister. She knew my passwords. I thought, because she once helped me set up some accounts, I never suspected. Days later, the silence from the company started to feel strange. I kept refreshing my inbox, searching for their name, thinking maybe I'd missed something. Nothing. Not even a confirmation. A week passed, 2. That tiny spark of hope dimmed with each refresh. Then one night, I saw it. I wasn't even looking for it. I was cleaning up files, trying to organize documents, when I clicked into my sent folder, and there it was, a reply I didn't write. "Thank you for considering me, but I've decided to pursue other opportunities." My name, my email signature, my rejection. I froze. My mouth went dry. I read it again and again, my brain refusing to accept it. My fingers shook so badly I had to grip the desk. For a moment, I actually thought maybe I had done it in some daze, like I had accidentally sabotaged myself. But the timing was wrong. The wording wasn't mine. And deep down, I knew Melissa. I could almost see her smirk as she typed it, casual, cruel, like it was nothing. I confronted her, of course. My voice trembled when I asked, "Did you answer something for me?" She just tilted her head, eyes wide, playing innocent. "What are you talking about, Jen?" But her phone lit up in her hand, and I caught a glimpse of her messages. A screenshot. My email, sent to a friend with laughing emojis underneath. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Do you know what it's like to feel your future stolen with a few keystrokes? To know someone who calls herself your family looked at your one shot at climbing out of despair and decided to snuff it out for sport? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her until she understood what she had done. Instead, I just stood there, shaking, while she rolled her eyes and walked away like I was the one making a scene. It's not just the job, it's what it meant. It was the hope, the possibility, the idea that maybe, just maybe, I could get out from under the weight of being everyone's safety net. And she took that from me without a second thought. Sabotage. In silence. That's what it was. A knife slipped between my ribs while she smiled across the dinner table. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, the glow of the streetlights spilling through the blinds. My chest ached, heavy and hollow all at once, and I thought to myself, if your own blood can betray you this quietly, then what are you still doing here, Jennifer? That was the seed of the storm that was coming. Dinner that night should have been a celebration. I walked home with a rare lightness in my step, clutching a folded letter in my bag like it was treasure. The marketing firm, another one, had finally called. Not a guarantee, but an opening, a chance. I wanted to share it, to breathe life into the silence that had been swallowing me whole these past months. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken and garlic bread. Plates were stacked, the cheap wine already poured. My mother sat at the head of the table, Harold beside her, Melissa across from my chair. They were laughing at something when I walked in, their voices spilling out in bursts. For once, I thought, maybe tonight will be different. Maybe tonight they'll see me. I slipped into my seat, waited for a pause, and then said it. I got some good news today. The words hung there like ornaments waiting to be admired. But before I could even explain, Melissa squealed. I have good news too. I got the promotion. The room exploded with applause. My mother clapped her hands together, eyes shining. Harold raised his glass. That's my girl. We knew you'd make it. Melissa basked in their warmth like a cat in the sun, flipping her hair, soaking in every compliment. I sat there, smile frozen, letter burning against my side. I tried again. That's amazing, Melissa. I'm happy for you. I also... But the wave rolled right over me. My mother leaned across the table to kiss Melissa's cheek, murmuring, You're the star of this family. Always have been. The words cut sharper than they knew. Always have been. Dinner stretched on, the conversation orbiting around Melissa's triumphs, her new title, her better pay. How proud they were. How lucky to have her. No one asked what my good news was. No one even noticed the silence on my end of the table. I chewed on bread that turned to dust in my mouth and felt myself shrink smaller and smaller, as if I were vanishing from their sight. When the plates were cleared, the real betrayal came. I had just carried my dish to the sink when I overheard them in the living room. Their voices were low, but clear enough. "She's not going anywhere," Harold said. "She can't. She doesn't realize it, but we need her," my mother added. "She's the one keeping this house running. The bills, the cards, it would all collapse without her." Melissa laughed. "That's why we make sure she stays. Keep her comfortable enough to stay, guilty enough not to leave." My heart slammed against my ribs. I stood there in the kitchen, hands wet from washing dishes, staring at the tiled wall as if it might open and swallow me. The truth poured into my ears, poisonous and undeniable. It wasn't that they forgot me. It wasn't that they overlooked me in the excitement. They had a plan, a strategy. I wasn't family to them. I was infrastructure, an income stream, a utility. The safety net they praised Melissa for never needing, that was me, the invisible one. I backed into my room, closed the door without a sound, and sat on the edge of my bed. My body felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out from the inside. They wanted me to stay, not because they loved me, but because they needed my money. And the worst part? I had been giving it, willingly, desperately trying to earn the affection they had no intention of giving. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, the laughter from earlier replaying in my head, twisting into something crueler with every echo. And as I watched the ceiling blur into morning light, one thought burned steady. This wasn't love. This was betrayal. Dressed up in family dinners and polite smiles. And I knew then the storm was only getting closer. I don't even remember how the argument started, just that it ignited like a match in a room soaked with gasoline. All the years of swallowed anger, of quiet sacrifices, of biting my tongue so hard it bled, it all surged out of me that night. We were in the living room. The glow of the TV flickered across their faces. Melissa scrolling on her phone, Harold sipping beer, my mother sorting through the mail. I stood there, heart pounding so loud I swore they could hear it, clutching a folder I'd been keeping hidden under my bed. Bank statements, utility bills, proof. "I'm done," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "I'm done pretending none of you see what I do." Melissa snorted without looking up. Oh God, here we go again. But this time, I didn't let her derail me. I dropped the folder on the coffee table, papers spilled everywhere, across their feet, across their perfect little bubble. "Every bill in this house, look at it. Rent, electricity, internet, even Harold's credit card debt. Whose name do you see?" "Mine. I've been paying me, while you treat me like a freeloader." My mother's eyes narrowed, lips pressed tight. "Jennifer, lower your voice. Don't make a scene." "Make a scene?" I laughed, a sound so brittle it cracked in the air. "The scene is already here, Mom. You've been living off me while telling me I'm the burden. Do you even realize how insane that is?" Harold shifted in his chair, cheeks red, but he said nothing. Of course he didn't. He never did, unless it was to cover Melissa or keep my mother's favor. Melissa finally looked up, smirking. "So what? You're the older one. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Step up, take responsibility. Nobody asked you to play hero." Her words hit like a slap. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay standing. I didn't play hero. I did what needed to be done because nobody else would. But don't twist it. I wasn't saving you. I was saving myself from drowning in your chaos. And now I'm finished. And the room felt heavy, suffocating. My mother stood then, voice sharp as broken glass. "You ungrateful child! How dare you stand in my house and accuse us? After everything I've done for you?" I stared at her, jaw tight. "Done for me? You mean letting me come back after I lost my job? Just so you'd have someone to pay your bills? That wasn't kindness. That was exploitation. Her face hardened, lines deepening like cracks in stone. Watch your mouth. For a moment, no one moved. The air was electric, buzzing, dangerous. And then Melissa leaned back, crossed her arms, and whispered just loud enough, "Pathetic." Something inside me broke. The room blurred, heat flooding my chest. Years of being dismissed, diminished, erased, it all funneled into that one word, spat from her lips like venom. I took a step closer, voice rising. Pathetic? No, Melissa. Pathetic is sabotaging your own sister because you can't stand her getting a chance. Pathetic is leeching off someone else's paycheck and still thinking you're better than them. That's you, not me. My mother lunged forward then, shouting, "Enough!" Her voice cracked, raw with rage. Harold muttered something about keeping the peace, but it was useless. The dam had burst. I looked at each of them, my mother's fury, Harold's cowardice, Melissa's smug grin, and felt something shift inside me. The fear that had kept me quiet all these years was gone, burned out. In its place, only fire remained. "I'm not your ATM," I said, words steady now, each one cutting through the room like a blade. "I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your scapegoat. I'm your daughter, your sister, but you don't treat me like family. You treat me like a paycheck. And I'm done letting you—" For a beat, silence. Then my mother's voice, shrill, final. "If you don't like it here, Jennifer, then pack your things and go." Her words hung in the air, a dare, a threat, a command. But instead of breaking me, they steadied me. For the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't trapped. I had a choice. And I was ready to take it. When my mother screamed, "Pack your things and go!" something inside me clicked. For years, those words would have terrified me, left me begging for forgiveness just to stay. But this time, they landed differently. They didn't feel like a threat. They felt like permission. Permission to finally do what I should have done long ago. I stood frozen for a moment, the room echoing with her fury, Melissa's smirk lingering like poison, Harold's silence weighing heavy as stone. My heart pounded, but it wasn't panic anymore. It was clarity, my jaw clenched, my chest steadying. I realized I had nothing left to lose, so I turned, without another word, and walked upstairs. The floorboards creaked beneath me, each step louder than their voices below. In my room, I grabbed my old suitcase from the closet. The zipper was stiff, the fabric frayed, but it didn't matter. It was more than luggage, it was my lifeline. Clothes went in first. I didn't fold them neatly, I just stuffed them. Shirts, jeans, a sweater that still smelled faintly of Manhattan winters. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from adrenaline. Every item I packed felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I pulled open my drawer and took the framed photo of me in my graduation gown. I slipped it face down into the suitcase. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted to keep it safe, away from this place that had turned my achievements into ammunition. Downstairs, I could still hear them arguing about me. Melissa laughed, my mother hissed, Harold muttered something about ungrateful. But their voices already felt far away, muffled by the storm inside my chest. And then I remembered. I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered for a second before I logged into every account. The bank, the utilities, the internet provider. One by one, I canceled the auto payments. The screen flashed confirmation after confirmation, little green check marks that felt like fireworks in my veins. With every click, I could almost hear the chains snapping. Electric bill? Canceled. Water? Canceled. Internet? Gone. Harold's credit card autopay? Done. They wanted me gone. Fine. But they would feel the absence of every dollar I had poured into this house. They would face the silence when the Wi-Fi went dead, the darkness when the lights shut off, the sting of bills they couldn't dodge anymore. For the first time in years, I smiled. A small, shaky smile, but real. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was sharp, final, like closing a chapter. I slung it off the bed, the weight almost pulling me backward. Heavy, yes, but nothing compared to the weight I was leaving behind. When I walked back downstairs, their eyes darted to the suitcase. My mother's mouth fell open. Melissa's smirk wavered. Harold blinked, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. "You're really going?" my mother asked, disbelief cutting through her anger. I met her eyes. "You told me to pack my things, so I did." The silence that followed was thick. For once, none of them had a quick retort. No guilt trip, no laughter, no orders barked my way. Just shock. They had never expected me to actually call their bluff. I walked past them, suitcase wheels clattering against the floor. Each roll echoed louder than their silence, louder than their years of belittling, louder than their excuses. At the door, I paused. Not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted this moment to sink in for them. I wanted them to remember the sound of me leaving. I turned my head slightly. "Good luck paying the bills," I said softly. Not cruel, just honest. Then I stepped outside. The night air hit me like a wave, cold, sharp, alive. I breathed in deep, the first full breath I'd taken in years. Behind me, the house loomed, lights blazing, voices muffled through the walls. But I didn't look back. The suitcase wheels rattled on the cracked sidewalk. Each step forward felt lighter, freer. I had no plan yet, no clear destination, just the certainty that leaving was the only way to save myself. They thought they'd punished me, but really, they'd set me free. The front door shut behind me with a thud that felt louder than any slam of anger. My suitcase rattled across the uneven sidewalk, its wheels catching in the cracks, jerking with every step. The night air stung my skin, cold enough to bite, but it felt cleaner than any breath I'd taken inside that house. For the first time in years, I was outside their cage. The street was quiet, almost eerily so. A single street lamp flickered above me, casting broken shadows across the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn echoed, sharp and impatient, then faded back into silence. I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle. Each roll forward sounded like punctuation marks. Louder, heavier, final. I glanced back once. The house loomed behind me, its windows glowing in the dark. Inside, they were probably still stunned, maybe already shouting at one another. But not at me. Not anymore. The sight of that house made my stomach twist, so I turned away. That chapter was closed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message notification. I didn't even pull it out. I knew who it was. Either Melissa, pretending smugness, or my mother demanding I come back, or Harold accusing me of betrayal. None of them deserved an answer. Not tonight. I reached the corner where the wind cut sharper, funneled between the buildings. I raised my arm, flagging down a cab. It took a few tries. Yellow cars sped by, drivers shaking their heads or already carrying passengers. My fingers numbed as I held them out, suitcase leaning against my leg like an anchor I refused to drop. Finally, one pulled over. The tires splashed through a puddle, water dark and rippling. The driver leaned across, window down. "Where to?" I hesitated for a second, not because I didn't know, but because saying it out loud felt surreal. "Clinton Street," I said, "near the bridge. My friend Lila's apartment, the only place I could think of where I'd be welcomed without question." The driver nodded, popping the trunk. I hefted my suitcase in, the weight dragging at my arms. When I slid into the back seat, the vinyl was cold, the air thick with the faint smell of cigarettes. The city lights streaked across the window as we pulled away. As Brooklyn blurred past, I pressed my forehead to the glass. The vibration of the road hummed against my skin. My reflection stared back at me, tired eyes, lips pressed tight. I didn't look victorious. I looked hollow, drained, but beneath that exhaustion, a spark flickered. The further we drove, the lighter I felt. With every block between me and that house, my chest loosened. For years, I'd felt like I was suffocating under obligations no one saw. Now, each passing street was a breath I'd been denied. But freedom had its own chill. My stomach knotted with the unknown. What if Lila couldn't take me in? What if I couldn't find work soon enough? What if, despite all my strength tonight, I stumbled? Fear pressed at me, whispering that maybe they were right. Maybe I was weak. Maybe I was a burden. I closed my eyes, gripping my knees until my nails dug into the denim. No, that wasn't true. I had carried them for years, paid bills they couldn't, kept lights on, made sure the house never fell apart. If anyone was a burden, it wasn't me. The cab slowed at a red light. A group of people crossed the street, laughing, arms linked, their joy spilling out into the night. I watched them, a pang rising in my chest. I wanted that ease, that laughter without weight, and for the first time, I believed maybe I could have it. When we pulled up outside Lila's building, I handed the driver cash with shaking hands. My suitcase thumped onto the curb. The cab drove off, tail lights fading into the distance. I stood there, staring up at the old brick building, its fire escape ladders climbing into the dark like skeleton arms. The air was colder here, sharper. My breath fogged, white against the night. I pulled my coat tighter around me, tugging my suitcase toward the entrance. The buzzer was worn, the nameplates scratched. I pressed Lila's, my finger trembling. For a moment, nothing. Then a crackle, her sleepy voice spilling through. "Hello?" "It's me," I whispered, suddenly choked up. "Jennifer." A pause, then the click of the door unlocking. Inside, the stairwell smelled faintly of paint and dust. My suitcase wheels clunked against each step as I dragged it up. By the time I reached her floor, my arms ached. But when Lila opened the door, all of it melted away. Her eyes widened, taking in my flushed face, the suitcase, the way my shoulders sagged. She didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into a hug. The warmth of it nearly broke me. I hadn't realized how long it had been since anyone held me without judgment, without expectation. I stepped into her apartment. The air was cozy, scented faintly of lavender. A blanket lay crumpled on the couch, a half-read book on the coffee table. It wasn't much, but to me it felt like sanctuary. I set my suitcase down and finally let out the breath I'd been holding since my mother's shout. My chest ached, but in that ache was relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. For the first time, I could hear silence without fear. I sank onto the couch, the cushions soft beneath me. My whole body trembled from adrenaline, from exhaustion, from the enormity of it all. Lila brought me a mug of tea, steam curling into the air. I wrapped my hands around it, the warmth seeping into my frozen fingers. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, I was free. And that was enough. The silence after leaving that house had been sharp and cold, but the silence that followed, the kind that came when I stopped paying for their world, was even louder. It didn't happen all at once. It started as a flicker, a ripple in the routine they had taken for granted, and then, like dominoes, it all fell. A week after I left, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity tugged at me. When I answered, The line was filled with static. Then my stepfather's voice, raw with panic.
Jennifer, what the hell happened? The internet's gone?
Melissa can't submit her work. Your mother can't watch her shows. I called the company. They said Autopay was canceled. Did you do this? I sat on the edge of Lila's couch, mug of coffee warm in my hand, and let the question hang. The anger in his voice sounded so hollow compared to the calm in mine. Yes, I said simply. I did. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by his sputtered, "You can't just..." Before I cut him off, I can. Because those bills were mine, not yours, and I don't live there anymore. Click. He hung up. It didn't take long for the other calls to start. My mother's number flashing, voicemail after voicemail piling up. Her voice, first sharp, then cracking. Jennifer, the power company says the bill hasn't been paid. What are you doing to us? Call me back immediately. And then, hours later, they shut off the electricity, do you understand? We're sitting in the dark. Melissa has a big project due and we can't even charge her laptop. You have to fix this. Each message bled into the next, the desperation rising like water in a sinking ship. I listened once, maybe twice, then stopped. I couldn't bear to replay them anymore. Not because I felt guilty, but because for once, the roles were reversed. They were drowning and they expected me to be the lifeboat. But I wasn't. Not anymore. The texts came next. Melissa's words, sharp daggers typed at midnight. Wow, so you're really that petty? Enjoy ruining your own family. Hope you're proud of yourself. And then, an hour later, you think you're better than us? Newsflash, you're nothing without this family. I read them with the kind of detachment you'd watch strangers argue in the street. Once, those words would have gutted me, twisted in my chest until I bent over backward to fix things. Now I just set my phone face down on the table and went back to my tea. Days turned into a rhythm of collapse. The heat was cut next. In the dead of winter, the pipes groaned and the air inside that house turned frigid. My mother's voice shook when she called that time. Jennifer, we can't do this without you. The gas company says the account holder is unreachable. Please, just help us, just this once. Just this once. How many times had she said that to me before? Just cover the mortgage this month. Just pay Harold's credit card. It won't happen again. Just keep the lights on until we figure it out. Just. A word that weighed down my entire adult life. And here they were again, using it like a key to open a door I had finally locked. But the truth was, I felt something different listening to them now. Not guilt, not obligation. Justice. Karma. The universe tipping the scales however belatedly. For years, they had lived cushioned by my sacrifices, smug in their entitlement. Now the cushion was gone, and they were hitting the ground hard. Lila noticed it in me, the way my shoulders straightened, the way my laughter returned in small bursts. She never judged, never told me to be the bigger person. She just poured me another cup of tea and said, "About time, Jen." One evening, I walked past their block. I didn't go near the house, but from a distance, I saw it. Windows dark, driveway empty. The glow that had once eaten up my paychecks was gone. The place looked smaller, weaker, like it had finally deflated without my lifeline. I stood there for a moment, coat wrapped tight around me, and felt the strangest mix of sorrow and relief. Sorrow because that house had been my childhood. Relief because it was no longer my prison. They tried calling again the next morning. I didn't answer. Instead, I wrote one final message, short and clear. You'll need to start paying your own bills. I won't be coming back. Not now, not ever. I hit send. My hands trembled, not from doubt, but from the release of years of pent-up weight. And as the message delivered, I realized something. The bridge between us wasn't just burned. It was gone, reduced to ash, carried away by the wind, and in its place was open sky. For the first time in decades, I could finally walk my own path, without dragging anyone else along. I thought cutting the autopay was the end of it. I thought silence would settle like dust, and finally, I'd be free. But my family wasn't done with me. Not by a long shot. When the lights went out in that house, they decided if they couldn't control me, they'd control the story. It started with a call from my aunt. Her voice was cautious, almost rehearsed. "Jennifer, I just need to ask you something. Did you really abandon your mother? She says you stormed out, left them with nothing, that you won't even answer her calls." My stomach tightened. I could almost hear my mother's script spilling out, word for word. Abandoned. Ungrateful. Cold. She had always been good at twisting knives into truths until the blade cut in her favor. "No," I told my aunt, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's not what happened. I didn't abandon them. I stopped being their safety net. There's a difference. But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Then the texts started. Cousins, family friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. "How could you do this to your mom?" "Family is family, Jennifer. Don't forget who raised you." And the worst one, "Your mom is heartbroken. She says you've become selfish." Selfish. That word followed me like a shadow. It was in every whispered phone call, every secondhand glance when someone in the family thought of me. And for a while, it got to me. I'd lie awake on Lila's couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe they were right. Maybe I was cruel. Maybe I should have stayed. But then I opened my laptop. I still had every receipt, every bank statement, every autopay confirmation that showed my money flowing like a lifeline into that house month after month. Rent, utilities, internet, even Harold's maxed out credit card, the one I paid down so creditors wouldn't hound them. Numbers don't lie. My mother could craft her stories, but I had evidence. So I did something I never thought I would. I wrote an email. One to the entire family. I didn't beg for understanding. I didn't lash out in anger. I just attached the documents. Line by line, I explained, "This is what I paid, this is what I covered, this is how much of my life was sacrificed, and this is how they repaid me." The email was clinical, almost cold, but beneath each sentence was the pulse of my exhaustion. I ended it with one truth. Walking away wasn't abandonment. It was survival. Is seen, then I hit send. The fallout was instant. Some relatives didn't reply at all. Others sent short, stilted messages. "I had no idea, Jennifer," end quote, end quote. "Your mother didn't tell us any of this." And one from my uncle that nearly made me cry. "You don't owe them your life. I'm proud of you for leaving." But I knew better than to think everyone would understand. My mother doubled down. She called me screaming, her voice hoarse with rage. "How dare you humiliate me like this? How dare you make me look like a fool to the family?" Her fury was almost laughable. Not once did she deny the numbers. Not once did she say, "That isn't true." But she only hated that the mask had slipped, that the image of a sainted mother had cracked under the weight of proof. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of her voice. I let her rant. I let her spew her poison through the phone. Then I said, calmly, "The truth isn't humiliation. It's just the truth. You should have thought about that before you used me like a bank." And I hung up. That night, I sat in Lila's kitchen, laptop glowing in front of me, rereading the email I had sent. It felt like airing dirty laundry, like tearing open wounds for everyone to see. But it also felt freeing. No more whispers. No more rumors sliding through the cracks of my family tree. Just facts, plain and bare. I realized something then. Their smear campaign wasn't about me at all. It was about power. If they painted me as the villain, they got to stay the victims. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. For once, I had written my own narrative. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of how the story sounded when it came from my own mouth. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when it happened. The kind of rain that doesn't fall. It slashes sideways, rattling the windows, drumming on the roof like it's trying to break its way in. I was curled up on my couch, laptop balanced on my knees, a mug of tea cooling beside me. I had just started to feel like the world was steady again. My own space, my own silence. No more chaos. Then came the knock. At first, I thought it was just the storm. Some loose branch tapping against the glass, but no. It was sharp, deliberate. 3 heavy thuds against my door. My heart jumped into my throat. Nobody ever came by unannounced. And in that silence that followed, all I could hear was the pounding of my own pulse. I set my laptop aside, stood, and crept toward the door. Each step felt like dragging my body through thick water. When I finally looked through the peephole, my breath caught. It was them. My mother, my stepfather, and behind them, my sister, holding an umbrella that was already flipped inside out by the wind. They looked drenched, desperate, and smaller than I had ever seen them. For a moment, I didn't move. I just stood there, staring through the tiny circle of glass, my mind blank. What were they doing here? How did they even know where I lived now? The knock came again, softer this time. My mother's voice, muffled through the door, cracked like old wood. "Jennifer, please, open the door." I froze. 100 memories crashed against me at once. Her shouting, "Pack your things." My stepfather turning away. My sister smirking as I dragged my suitcase out into the night. The way my chest had burned with betrayal. The way my hands had shaken as I canceled every autopay that tethered me to them. And now they were here. I didn't want to open the door. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home. Let the rain swallow them whole. But my hand moved on its own, trembling as it curled around the doorknob. I unlocked it just enough to crack it open. The sight nearly undid me. My mother's makeup was streaked down her cheeks, her eyes swollen and red. My stepfather's shoulders, once broad and firm, were hunched like he'd aged 20 years in just a few weeks. And my sister, my golden sister, stood silently behind them, her usual smugness gone, replaced with something I had never seen before. Fear. "Jennifer," my mother whispered. We're losing the house. We don't know where else to go." Her words cut through me. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Losing the house? The very house I had kept afloat with my paychecks? My sleepless nights? My sacrifices? My stepfather spoke next, his voice low. "The bills, the mortgage, everything's overdue. We tried, but..." His voice cracked and he looked down at his shoes. "We can't keep up." And then my sister stepped forward. Her lips parted, but for once, no clever line, no sarcastic jab came out. She just said one word. "Please." I felt the ground tilt under me. This was the twist I never saw coming. The people who had branded me selfish, who had smeared my name to everyone we knew, who had thrown me out like I was disposable, they were standing at my door, begging for help. A storm howled outside, water pooling around their feet. Inside, the air felt too thick to breathe. I didn't answer right away. My mind spun, my chest tight with a mixture of emotions I couldn't untangle. Anger, sorrow, vindication, even a stab of pity I didn't want to admit was there. In that silence, I realized something. This was the moment everything shifted. They weren't the ones in control anymore. I was. And as I stood there, gripping the edge of the door, I knew my next choice would rewrite the story of us forever. I never thought I'd hear those words. Not from them, not in this lifetime. We sat in my small living room, the rain still thrashing against the windows, dripping from their coats onto the floor. The air was heavy, tense, like it was holding its breath. My mother sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles turned white. My stepfather hunched beside her, staring at the carpet as if it might open up and swallow him whole. My sister, she stood for a long time, restless, shifting from one foot to the other until finally she sank into the armchair across from me. No one spoke at first. The silence was almost unbearable. I could hear the hum of my refrigerator in the kitchen, the tick of the clock on the wall. My heart pounded so loud I was sure they could hear it. And then my mother looked up. Her eyes were glassy, rimmed red. "Jennifer," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I owe you an apology." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. My mother had never apologized to me. Not once. Not when she dismissed my feelings, not when she called me ungrateful, not when she told me to pack my things and leave. I just stared at her, waiting for the catch, but her words tumbled out, halting and raw. We took you for granted. We leaned on you for everything. And when you needed us to stand by you, we pushed you away. She paused, covering her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders shook. I was wrong. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My mother, the woman who prided herself on being unyielding, was unraveling right in front of me. My stepfather finally raised his head. His voice was hoarse, stripped of all the dismissive tone he usually carried.
I knew you were paying more than your share. I knew it, Jennifer. And I let it happen because it was easier.
I told myself it was temporary, but the truth is, I used you. We all did. He shook his head, shame written across his face. And now we're paying the price. I swallowed hard, my chest aching. A part of me wanted to shout, to unleash every ounce of anger I'd carried for years. But before I could speak, my sister broke the silence. Her eyes filled with tears, her hands gripping the arms of the chair like she was holding on for dear life. "It was me," she said, her voice cracking. "That job interview you never heard back from? It wasn't them. It was me." My stomach dropped. She looked straight at me, guilt spilling out of her like a flood. "I read your email. I pretended to be you. I turned it down." Her words came in broken bursts. "I didn't want you to leave. I thought, if you got that job, if you moved out, everything would fall apart. And I was jealous, okay? I was jealous that you might succeed while I was still nothing." Tears streamed down her face now. "I ruined your chance. I ruined it because I was selfish." I felt the room tilt, like the walls themselves were closing in. That missing opportunity. The one that could have changed everything. She had stolen it from me. My own sister. The betrayal burned, sharp and fresh, even now. "I'm sorry, Jennifer," she choked out. "I am so, so sorry. I can't take it back, but I need you to know the truth. I need you to hear me say it. I hurt you. And I regret it." The room spun with too many emotions. Anger surged hot in my chest, but beneath it, something else flickered. Grief, exhaustion, even a strange relief. For the first time, they weren't denying. They weren't twisting the narrative. They were owning it. I sat back, staring at them. My family, stripped of their defenses, laid bare in front of me. My mother crying. My stepfather ashamed. My sister broken and guilty. It was everything I had wanted for so long. Acknowledgement, truth, the simple validation that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the weight crushing me. And yet, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt complicated. Because apologies don't erase scars. Words don't rewind time, but they mattered. For years I had carried this story alone, screaming inside my own head that I had been wronged, that I had given everything and been treated like nothing. And now here they were, saying the words out loud. I don't know if I can forgive you, I admitted, my voice trembling. But I hear you. The tears on my sister's face deepened. My mother nodded, wiping her own cheeks. My stepfather lowered his head again. For the first time, the room didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like the aftermath, wreckage everywhere, but also the possibility, however faint, of rebuilding. And in that moment, I realized maybe this was the beginning of a different story. One where I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. One where my pain wasn't ignored. One where I finally had the power to decide what came next. For most of my life, I thought love meant sacrifice. That to keep the peace, I had to give until there was nothing left of me. But as I sat there in my own living room, listening to my family's apologies spill into the air, I realized something I had never allowed myself to believe. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. I took a deep breath, the kind that fills your lungs and steadies your spine. My mother's eyes were still damp, my stepfather's gaze low, and my sister was wringing her hands, waiting, hoping I'd tell them what they wanted to hear. That I'd forgive, forget, and fall right back into the role they'd carved out for me. But that Jennifer was gone. I hear you, I said slowly. I hear the apologies, and I don't doubt that you mean them. But we can't go back to how things were. That nearly destroyed me. The room shifted. My mother leaned forward, her voice trembling. Then, what do we do? How do we fix this? That was the question, wasn't it? For years, I had been the fixer. The one who pulled out her wallet when the lights threatened to go out. The one who took on the debt, the stress, the silence. And fixing, in their eyes, always meant me bending until I broke. Not anymore. I'll help, I said, my voice firm. But not the way you're used to. I'm not your ATM. I'm not your safety net. I won't pay your bills, and I won't give you a place to stay. My sister's eyes widened. But Jennifer! I raised my hand, cutting her off. Listen, I'll help you in the only way that's actually sustainable. I can sit down with you and create a financial plan. I can help you find resources for jobs, housing, whatever you need to build stability. But I will not, under any circumstance, move you into my apartment or hand you money. Those days are done. The words landed heavy, like stones thrown into a still pond. My mother pressed her lips together, and I could see the resistance in her eyes, the instinct to push back, to guilt me, to twist my boundaries into betrayal. But she stayed quiet, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a little girl begging to be understood. I felt like a woman standing in her own truth. I continued, softer this time, but still steady. If you want my advice, I'll give it. If you want me to connect you to opportunities, I'll try. But this relationship only works moving forward if there are rules. My rules. If you can't respect that, then we don't have a relationship. It's that simple. My stepfather let out a long, shaky sigh, rubbing his face with his hands. It'll be hard, he muttered. Yes, I said. It will. But it's the only way. My sister, tears still streaming, nodded slowly. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. And in that moment, something unthinkable happened. I felt a weight lift off me. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next demand, the next crisis, the next plea. I had drawn a line, and whether they liked it or not, they knew it was real. The power didn't come from their apology. It came from me finally deciding the terms of my own life. I could see the shock on their faces, the dawning realization that the version of me they had known was gone forever. And though it scared them, it freed me. I leaned back, folding my hands in my lap. This isn't me shutting the door. It's me opening a new one, but only if you can walk through it with respect. I won't lose myself again. I'd rather have distance than chains. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was different. It was the sound of new ground being broken, of rules being rewritten, of love being redefined. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't negotiating with them. I was negotiating with myself, promising never to betray the woman I had fought so hard to become. And as the rain eased outside, tapping gently against the window, I knew this was my turning point. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was leading. And that, more than anything, was the rule that mattered most. When I look back now, it almost feels like a different lifetime. The nights I lay awake in that cramped Brooklyn bedroom, worrying if my paycheck would stretch far enough to cover the mortgage that wasn't even mine. The quiet humiliation of knowing I was the invisible backbone of a family that treated me like a burden. I remember the suffocating weight of it all, like chains wrapped around my chest. But today my life is not defined by those chains anymore. I have my own apartment now. Small, yes, but every corner of it breathes freedom. The walls are painted a soft sage green I chose myself. My bookshelf is messy, stacked with novels I finally have time to read. In the mornings, I sit by the window with a mug of coffee, watching the city stretch awake. That quiet ritual, coffee, sunrise, silence, is something no one can take from me. And work? It came back to me in ways I didn't expect. I landed a position at a mid-sized media firm downtown, and though it's not the skyscraper office in Manhattan I once knew, it feels right. The team is kind, collaborative. I feel valued again, not just tolerated. I get to use my skills, build campaigns, see results, and I no longer feel like I'm drowning in someone else's debt. I even laugh more now. That might sound small, but for years my laughter was cautious, measured, like I needed permission. These days I laugh out loud at the tiniest things. Spilled pasta sauce, a silly text from a friend, the way my neighbor's dog insists on greeting me every morning. But don't get me wrong, it's not like I cut my family off completely. Every now and then, I'll meet them for dinner. We sit in a diner booth, order pancakes or burgers, and the conversation feels different now. It's not about who's paying what bill or what sacrifice I need to make next. It's lighter, more respectful, because they know the rules. They know the Jennifer who walks into that booth is not the Jennifer they once drained dry. The truth is, the distance saved us. By putting boundaries in place, I gave myself room to breathe and gave them the chance to actually see me, not just what I could provide. Sometimes I think back to that night, the suitcase rolling behind me, the rain-soaked taxi ride, my fingers trembling as I canceled the Autopay on every account. I thought I was losing everything, but really, I was gaining it all. I was gaining myself. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the simple choices, saying no, closing a door, locking it if you have to. And with each no I've spoken, I've built a life that finally feels like mine. I'm stronger now. Not because I never falter, but because I refuse to go back to the version of me that lived for everyone else's comfort. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. Walking away from toxic expectations isn't selfish. It's survival. And survival, in its own way, is love. Love for yourself. Because once you choose yourself, life beyond the chains doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. So let me ask you, have you ever had to break free from chains that weren't yours to carry? What did freedom look like for you? Share it with me. I want to hear your story too. I've shared my story. The fights, the betrayals, the heartbreak, and the moment I finally walked away. You've heard how I packed my things, canceled the autopay, and stepped into a new life where I could finally breathe. But now, I want to turn to you, because I know I'm not the only one. Some of you watching right now, you're sitting in your own version of that suffocating house. Maybe it's not bills, maybe it's not family, but you know what it feels like to be drained, to be used, to be made invisible. You know the ache of loving people who don't love you back in the way you need. And maybe, just maybe, you've also felt the pull to break free. I want to ask you, have you ever had to set boundaries with someone close to you? A parent, a sibling, a partner, even a friend? Was there a moment when you realized enough is enough? That moment when survival meant choosing yourself, even if it broke someone else's heart? I know those moments are never easy. My hands were shaking when I zipped my suitcase that night. My voice cracked when I said no for the first time. But strength doesn't always look like roaring courage. Sometimes it's just that tiny, trembling step forward, choosing yourself even when you're terrified. So I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments below. Tell me, what gave you the strength to say no? What pushed you to draw the line? And if you haven't yet, what's holding you back? Your voice matters. Your story matters. And you never know. Someone scrolling through the comments might need to hear your words to finally take their first step. If this story resonated with you, share it with a friend who might need that reminder that boundaries are not betrayal. They are survival. Hit the like button if you've ever had to fight for your own freedom, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine, because this isn't just my journey, it's ours. So your turn. The floor is yours. What chains have you broken? Or which ones are you ready to break?